Howdy everyone, and let's get straight into testing out another new manual focus lens from Laowa, the 15mm f5 Cookie, which offers a full frame image circle. Ultra-wide angle pancake lenses are getting a little more common these days, and they can actually be quite useful. Most photographers don't need to shoot at ultra-wide angles very often, so it can be handy to have a small, inexpensive one to throw in your camera bag for occasional needs. 15mm really is fantastically wide as well on a full-frame camera, although f5 is pretty narrow as far as maximum apertures go, so this thing will be tricky to use indoors or in any other dark situation. This one will be available for Sony E, Canon RF, Nikon Z, Leica M mount, and also L mount mirrorless camera systems. I'd like to thank Laowa for loaning me a sample of this lens for a couple of weeks for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. The lens's price will be $400. The lens itself is really small, as you can see, and despite being made of metal, it's pretty lightweight. Interestingly, not only does it feature weather sealing around the metallic lens mount, but we also get electronic contact and a micro USB port for firmware updates. Well, on the Sony E mount anyway. Those electronic contacts feed back EXIF and focusing information to the camera, enabling manual focus assistance when you move the focus ring. The lens's aperture is also fully controlled by your camera, which can be useful also, but the lens is still manual focus only. And speaking of manual focus, the lens's only control point is the small manual focus ring. It turns very smoothly but quite loosely, but precisely manually focusing an ultra-wide lens at a maximum aperture of only f5 is hardly a major challenge. As you can see here, the lens does exhibit quite some focus breathing, but when video making, at least, it's hardly going to be an issue at such a wide angle. The lens's filter thread size is a very small 39mm, but you'll definitely want to use slim filters here to avoid physical vignetting problems. It also comes with a very dinky little plastic hood, which will probably make almost no difference to your images in use, it's just too thin. Overall though, the lens is small and handy, and I'm impressed that Laowa got aperture control working so well on it. Alright then, image quality. I'll be testing it today on a full frame camera, my 42MP Sony a7R III. In-camera corrections are turned on, although as we'll find out in a minute, they're not really making a great difference. At f5, the lens is razor sharp in the middle with excellent contrast. As we look over into the corners, they look softer, but a reasonably clear picture is still being captured here. The corners are dark though, and we're still seeing some obvious lateral chromatic aberration on contrasting edges. Stop down to f8 and those corners look a little brighter and a touch sharper. f11 looks about the same, and f16 just gets softer due to the effect of diffraction. Well, overall, for a pancake lens with such an extreme wide angle, this is actually a decent enough performance, quite usable in terms of acceptable amounts of detail being captured, but you'll definitely want to add extra correction to its vignetting to brighten those corners up a bit and to fix any chromatic aberration problems also. Alright, let's turn off in-camera corrections and take a look at distortion and vignetting. Without corrections, we see slight barrel distortion but very dark corners at f5. At f8 and f11, those corners brighten just a little but are still a problem. By the way, here's what the image looks like at f5 with corrections turned on. There's still heavy vignetting, and the camera is overcorrecting the distortion now, flipping it into a pincushion pattern, so a bit more work seems to be needed on those in-camera corrections from Laowa. Okay, well, let's look at close-up image quality now, and this lens's minimum focus distance is a very nice 12cm, which is really handy. At f5, we're seeing some good sharpness close-up, but some gnarly blue colour fringing. Stop down to f8 though, and that's quickly gone, thankfully. Alright, let's see how the lens works against bright lights now. Unfortunately at f5, we're seeing a considerable amount of flaring here of all different patterns. Interestingly, stop down to f5.6 and the flaring quickly goes away to be replaced by some bogus sun stars. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look at chroma levels. Thankfully they are low, straight from f5, so let's zoom out and take a closer look at those sun stars from earlier. All you have to do is stop down to f5.6 just a little bit, and right away some crazy broad sun stars appear. As you stock down to f11 or f16, they become absolutely huge. At what point do sunstars become too big? That's what I want to know. And finally, bokeh. Frankly, even on a full-frame camera, getting out-of-focus backgrounds with this lens is a major issue because of the wide angle and narrow maximum aperture. When you do get close enough to your subject, your backgrounds will look fine, but a little eclectic. A few weird things are going on here and there to jumble things up. Anyway, due to the lens's parameters, as I mentioned, bokeh is a bit of a moot point. So then, overall, for a small ultra-wide lens to keep in your camera bag, this thing is quite serviceable, especially for landscape work, as it can use front filters. You will need to additionally correct its vignetting and lateral chromatic aberration issues, but a decent level of sharpness is here. As for me personally, for my own ultra-wide angle needs, even if only occasional, I'd prefer something a bit bigger with a brighter aperture. Bear in mind that there's some great value 14mm f2.8 lenses out there now, but only if you're happy with the extra size and weight, and that's the advantage this little cookie lens certainly has. Okay, well, always nice to see a new Laowa lens arriving in the office. They always offer something a bit different, and I like to see third parties adding electronic features to their lenses also. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to my Patreon supporters, of course. Check out the link in the description below. Patreon supporters get all kinds of exclusive bonus content, including special videos, and they make a huge difference in keeping these sponsorship-free videos hitting the scene. Ciao for now, everyone.